This is Actualize Freedom, straight talk on growing clicks and conversions on Amazon FBA from people doing it every day. Now here's your host, digital marketing acrobat, Kenji Carlson.
All of you automation nerds out there, if you're not a nerd about automation, then you probably should be, because it is one of the best ways to make your business more efficient, aka more profitable, and also just less of a mess. So there's no one that I could bring on that knows more about this really in the Amazon space than Will Christensen. He is the founder of Data Automation. Basically, they're a company that will take the problems that businesses have and they repeatedly do and then find a way to automate them with a piece of custom software or piecing things together with common programs like Zapier, whatever you want to call it. And he's just someone who has dove into this on a super, super deep level. So we go into specifically what should Amazon sellers be automating in their business? What should they be outsourcing to virtual assistants? And, really what can you do and not do with automation? So let's check out this interview with Will Christensen of Data Automation. What is up, guys? This is Danny Carlson here. It is bright and early in the morning in Bali. I love getting into the office super early. I got in at 6 a.m. this morning, and there's no one on the road, so I can ride my motorcycle 130 kilometers an hour down the empty roads that usually is very backed up in the super narrow Bali streets. So that was my excitement for the morning, and the excitement is about to continue because I'm talking to someone I find very interesting that is one of the leading experts I know on automation, how to automate things in your business and for other businesses. So welcome, Will. I'm really excited for this conversation on data automation. How's it going?
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to be here. It's good to my excitement wasn't 130 kilometers down the road. I have achieved a different dream. My commute was about a 30-second walk out to my office that I built in my garage and, run a little company on automation.
Well, that's pretty great there. For someone who loves efficiency, that is probably the perfect thing you could be doing right there. You automated your commute.
I automated my commute. That's exactly right.
That is great. Well, that algorithm might be hard for people to replicate, but maybe let's talk a little bit about just your overall mindset towards automating things. Like, what do you really look at when you're looking at these businesses, your clients, or for your own business? What are you looking at as far as what things can I automate? Like, where can I get these efficiencies? Just your overall mindset towards it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've shared this litmus test a couple of times on a couple of different podcasts. So if someone's following me around and picking up the different episodes I'm on, they've heard this before, but the powerful thing as far as automation is concerned is knowing when to automate, right? When is it time to actually pick that up? And that's a question that we struggled with for a long time here at Data Automation. We obviously put up a banner and said, hey, come talk to us about automation. And so we got a lot of opportunities to try to automate something and failed miserably. Just one thing or another. And so through that process, we've come up with some tried and true rules that we kind of say like, okay, this is when you should be automating. And the first litmus test that I look at is time. What are you doing when you automate something? You are purchasing time back from your future to put into your business or to put into your life. I tell people I'm a time lord. I'm the only guy who can actually sell the one thing money can't buy. I sell time. And when we automate a process, that's what we're doing. So that's our first metric is time. Ask yourself, are you doing anything that you are currently spending more than 15 minutes a day, more than an hour a week, or more than an hour a month that could be handed off to an intern with a basic understanding of Excel or Google Sheets in less than 15 minutes? So something where you're teaching someone else to do it, and it only takes 15 minutes to teach it. And so the litmus test took me a while to figure out those two pieces of it. One, is it simple enough to teach to an intern? And is it dense enough in terms of the amount of time that it's taking you that it's more than 15 minutes a day, more than an hour a week, or more than an hour a month? And that's been super powerful, because if I apply that litmus test to something and it doesn't hit that metric in terms of time, probably should be looking elsewhere. don't waste your automation efforts on something that doesn't hit that metric.
I love that too. And in this case, your analogy of the intern is probably an intern with autism, one that is incredibly smart in one thing, but is, maybe a little bit more challenged in another thing. Because some of these algorithms you can get your magical intern to do are pretty incredible, right? So that's a really good litmus test. And would you say that if you're automating the wrong things, it is possible to essentially just exacerbate something happening worse? You take a process that just doesn't really work well and you try to automate it like that. What's that going to do?
Leads me to another litmus test that I'd use. If you haven't done that thing 5 times manually, get your butt back in your seat and do it manually 5 times. If you haven't done it 5 times, don't even consider automating it. And the reason that you have to do that is because if you haven't done it 5 times manually, you haven't done it. So how could you possibly decide which step or which direction to take when you come to that fork in the road without knowing that? Think about invoicing, for example. If you automate invoicing without a human touch, you're likely to tick off your client because you weren't actually done with the project. And generally speaking, the insinuation of sending an invoice is, I'm done, now pay me. So if you say, I'm done, now pay me before you're actually done, they're going to be like, no, you're not. And now you're done because I'm hiring somebody else, right? So you got to be really careful about what you've automated, and you've done it enough times to see that. 5 times is the absolute minimum, depending
Oh,
on the
that's such an important point. Yeah, like I've made that mistake a lot in the past. When I was first getting started with the agency, whenever I was creating a new process, I would just obsessively create this process and just make it really perfect. I would go into like Trello and Zapier and just make everything really smooth. Before I had done it 5 times, I had maybe done it once, or sometimes I had done it 0 times. And then this 3-hour, 4-hour process that I made, I hand it off to somebody, and lo and behold, there's all these problems with it, and they're coming back with like, what do I do when this happens? And then I go in and look at it, and I'm like, oh, that's because my process doesn't actually work because I didn't actually do it. So, yeah, important.
Yeah, I didn't think about that could even be a possibility. And so that 5 times forces you, once you've done it 5 times, you're through it enough times that you've taken that left and that right and that left and that right. And I mean, honestly, that applies. We're starting a podcast at Data Automation. It's debuting in April, called Automate, Delegate, Eliminate. It kind of a game show kind of thing. And the whole idea is you shouldn't be automating, you shouldn't be delegating, and probably shouldn't be eliminating until you've tested it and you've done it 5 times, because you don't know what impact it's going to have on your business until you've done it 5 times. And just grit your teeth and recognize that you got to do it manually 5 times before you can touch it with automation.
Yeah, that's a really good point too about not delegating before you understand something as well. So like SEO, if you don't really understand how SEO works, how are you going to hire an SEO expert? That's probably the biggest example out there of there's just a lot of agencies and SEO experts that really also don't know what they're doing themselves, but they can charge thousands of dollars a month and get people on these predatory contracts. You hear stories all the time about people getting, just totally ripped off by SEO agencies that don't know what they're doing. And that's because they had no idea what they're doing. And they're like, oh, here's, I just am going to hire this person to completely take it off my hands and hope that they can get me some results. And it's probably not a good position to be putting yourself in. And that brings me to the next point here, which is the best benefit of having automation in your business is getting rid of the human component, right? And that's for a lot of different reasons. Humans are expensive, depending on how much you're paying them. They can cost, in Canada at least, a minimum of, I think, $13 an hour now. And if you want someone who decently knows what they're doing, you're probably going to have to pay them $20 an hour. And data automation can fix a lot of these problems. So let's talk a little bit about why you might want to use data automation to replace a human component in your company.
Yep, absolutely. So the human component, and let me be totally clear here. Without the human component in a business, you're fried. Like, you have to have the human component, because humans really are the way that we make it to the next level. They're what decide what the robots should take over. So it's about finding the right human who is willing to automate their processes and add value to your business. I call them automation advocates. So if you can create automation advocates inside your business, first you become an automation advocate, become basically skilled in something like Zapier or Google Sheets and some of these other tools, the way you can push things back and forth. Then develop that culture inside your company so that you grow and can develop other people to become automation advocates, because there comes a point when you need to either delegate that task to someone who's lower level, or like you said, we need to eliminate that task from the human genome of what you're supposed to be doing and hand it to a robot. And so, it's super important to eliminate that waste. If you've done it more than 5 times and you find yourself copying and pasting, stop copying and pasting. There are better ways than copying and pasting. And so, I hate copying and pasting 2 times, but I force myself to do it 5 times before I decide if it's even a good idea, because a lot of times it doesn't come up a 5th time or a 4th time. It just happened, that once or twice, and so it wasn't as big a deal. So when you're eliminating that waste, you can use things that will automatically transfer. So Zapier, you mentioned, it's an integration platform as a service, and there are a lot of other platforms out there like Zapier that do things like this. The number one tool I use to eliminate manual waste, this is going to blow your mind. You ready for this? It's called Google. I literally pull out and I say, what am I doing manually? And I type out exactly what I'm doing manually. Manually copying and pasting invoice from QuickBooks to Google Sheet. If you were to just literally type that sentence, nothing else, just that sentence, you're going to come up with some search results that are going to help you refine how other people have done it. So the trick to Google and automation is find out how everybody else is complaining about that thing you're trying to automate, and then you'll find the solution. And half the time, you're going to find somebody who built a SaaS company who are begging you to put that into their search terms so they can charge you a $10 a month or sometimes free fee to use whatever it is that they're doing. You're going to find an AppSumo deal. You're going to find things out there that will solve the issue you're facing if you'll turn around to Google and spend 15 minutes massaging. And your guess is not, how do I find a solution? When you start typing in Google, the question should not be what solution is out there. The question should be, how are other people complaining about this? And once you start to sound like the other people, Google becomes a magic place that just hands you automation.
Oh, it's so good. And you can guarantee a lot of these software companies have marketers out there like me who are just going to come in there and create all these SEO optimized blog posts exactly trying to solve your problem. And they're going to have all those search terms. So you type in one of those search terms, there's a good chance that someone has positioned their exact company and marketing around trying to solve that exact problem. That's such a good tip right there.
They're begging you to learn how the other people are searching for this so that you can find what they're looking for. The problem with people in automation and people in Google in general, my wife, she gets in there and she's like, I don't know how you do it, Will. Like, you go search for something and you find it. I go search for something, I can't find it. And the reason is, when I type something into Google the first time, I'm not asking myself, what is the solution to my problem? I'm asking myself, am I phrasing this the same way that the rest of the population is? And until I start to phrase it the same way that the rest of the population is, or someone else who's had my problem, I can't find what I'm looking for.
Yeah, unless you are Tushy. There's this company out there called Tushy that, unfortunately, their domain name is this crazy porn site, and they just had to kind of deal with that. So like they have like gettushy.com or something like that, and a lot of their customers, unfortunately, are going to end up on this porn site. So maybe you should check your brand name before you start a company close to that.
Yeah, you gotta be a little careful sometimes. But I'm sure even Tushy is looking. They've got other things that they've tried really hard to pull out other problems and blog posts that aren't talking Tushy, that are talking what the problem is.
Oh, totally. I think we just lost like half the audience. They went off to go search for tushy.com right now. So you guys have fun. Those of us who are still with us. So Yeah, that's a very interesting point about that. And let's talk a little bit about eliminating some of that human waste. So, like, what are some of the key functions that are more common among a lot of your clients that work with you for data automation? How do they eliminate some of this waste in their business? They're identifying things that actually do need to be automated. They've gone through your process. What are some of those things, and what are the benefits of eliminating the waste in those parts of their business?
Yep. I would say the biggest thing that I see as far as automating some of those manual processes and eliminating that waste, most of the time what happens is, and this is very common, someone in a company has built a really beautiful pivot table or Excel report. And that pivot table or Excel report becomes key to the business's function. It's like, wow, we look at this on a weekly basis, and every time we look at it, it's like, wow, we could really, push this to the next level if we could see this. And every time they look at that, they change something about the business and they learn to tweak, right? It becomes a compass to the business, this little report. Well, what they didn't know is that report pulls in 7 different data sources that are disparate and totally different, and they have to massage the data because it's not all in there, and it actually takes 4 or 5 hours to create that manual report that gives so much information to their business. Well, every single time you take data from somewhere else and put it into somewhere, there's probably a place. So one of the places I look for is data transfer, data transfer, data transfer, data transfer. The next place I look is data manipulation. So where's the data now? What needs to happen to it when it on its way to your destination, and where does it need to go? Those are 3 questions that I often ask myself when I'm saying, should I eliminate this? And so those data transfer points into that Google spreadsheet or into that spreadsheet are a common place that I find automating opportunities. Okay. And oftentimes that's done via manual download. I go in, I download it from the website, I put it in there, I run a pivot table on it, and I mash it together with another table to get me that data that I'm looking for. And so that's a very common place. So business metrics or things like that. So that 5-hour report that was being done once a month, the CEO or somebody comes to the guy who's doing that report and says, hey, can you do that like every week? And the guy's like, I guess. And so he's now spending 5 hours a week instead of 5 hours a month. And then the CEO is like, this isn't fast enough. Like, the business is moving, the volume's gone up. I need that report every day. And he turns around to the guy and he says, can you run that report every day? And the guy's like, if you hire me an assistant, like it's 5 hours worth of work. That's when automation that's when people start hunting for someone, is they're like, I need this every day. And that's one of the huge benefits of automation, is you take that manual report that comes out there that took 5 hours to do, and it might still take 5 hours for a robot to do it, but the robot never sleeps, never eats, never takes breaks. He works in the middle of the night. So at 2 a.m., he wakes up, does that report, and does what you were looking for, and has it ready for you fresh in your inbox in the morning. And because that data that was given was so pivotal, now the business can make those decisions and navigate those waters. And he can say, you know what, let's take this to the next level. Let's normalize all the data and make it real time. So that's really what you're talking about when you're talking about automation, is how can I get at my fingertips the business information and metrics that are going to really change my business?
Oh, and that's so key too, especially to the accuracy of the information. So we use automations in our business when a new customer pays an invoice, for example. There's all these automations that will create everything we need in our task management software. It's going to create the records that we need in certain places. And a lot of that time, if that's done manually, it's just open for a lot of errors. So the benefit of the automation is exactly what's on the invoice is exactly everything that's going to show up in the task management software to a T, down like the names of everything is going to be perfect. Nothing is going to be missed. Definitely in the past, I've had these things done manually by a virtual assistant or something like that. And the headache that it causes when just like one line item is missed in your task management software or something like that, and then you find out a month later when the client is mad that they didn't receive the thing they paid for just because someone made an error copy and pasting something over, right? You're not going to run into that problem if you set up a good data automation. So obviously this episode is all about automation, and automation is great and that should be the first thing that you do in your business, but what comes after automation is delegation, right? There's just a lot of things that you're not going to be able to automate. You just need a real life human being to actually do it and make those decisions and write in real language that makes sense to people. And a really important place for that is on your Amazon listing, right? Product photography, still not to my knowledge, automatable thing to do. Keyword optimization, while keyword tools are really great, they are still not going to be able to tell the really subtle differences between keywords that don't really, they're not spelled the same, but they mean the same thing, right? So really important to have a human being going over that. And listing copywriting. Kenji ROI does all of this for our clients. Product photography, listing copywriting, product videos, A+ content, and PPC management. So for all of the things that you cannot automate in your business, which I fully recommend you should do first, then Kenji ROI can handle those things for you. So head to kenjiroi.com. If you're looking for any of that, please check it out. It supports the Actualize Freedom podcast and brings this content to you.
Well, and I'll tell you, I mean, especially for those Amazon sellers that are listening, it is huge to get your arms around some of what's possible here, because your business is all based upon transactions. And where do those transactions live? A lot of times they live in Amazon. You got to go into Seller Central and get that stuff downloaded. Most of those reports are available via what we call an API, where we can download, push that around, move that data around, and automate it. We've even got technology that we use that can get in behind that login wall and allow you to export that data in an automatic way, so that it'll push right into whatever data system you're needing, even if it's not in the API. So, Amazon Custom, Amazon Handmade, a lot of those things that are quite difficult to get at, if you look for the right company, there are solutions out there for that. And that's what's cool is, again, go ask Google, find it in the way that other people are complaining about it. And people are begging for that sort of result.
Well, that's huge intel right there. And anyone who spent any amount of time in Amazon business reports or advertising reports knows that they're not the best reports. They are kind of hard to access, and you got to download like an Excel sheet, or the dashboard within Seller Central is kind of limited. It's just really not that great. So give us some examples of some things that you have set up for your clients, or you have seen Amazon sellers set up that really have been game changers for their business.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I would say is right now it is not possible to get some of the customization data. So if you're an Amazon seller and you're in the Etsy portion of Amazon, we'll call it that, where you're doing Amazon custom or Amazon handmade stuff, where you're like, you're like embroidering on a shirt or something like that. That data is not even available. And so a lot of times what you have to do in that situation is get in there with a Chrome extension or something like that. And that's something we've done. We've been able to successfully eliminate. So remember, we're looking for processes that are copy and paste heavy. That happens to every single order that's associated with several companies that I work with. And they have to pick that information up and go paste it into ShipStation or paste it into whatever other shipping software they're using to get that to move to that next step. So every single time. Now, if it's only 10 orders a day, probably not time to call me yet. But if you're really getting in there, then you really got to start to look at it and say, okay, how can I get at this data and move it in a way that is efficient and does where I need it to go? Inside the back end of Amazon, there's a lot of reports that are only available after you click a button. I don't know if you've seen that before, where you have to you go in, get it there. It's not immediately available for download, but you can schedule the download with the click of a button. So you actually have to click something. We've built tools that will go back into the back end and click that button for you, so that data is fresh and available. And sometimes all you have to do is click that button, and then you go get it via the API. So they've got all sorts of different rules and things like that. So if you're curious about where that can go, a quick Google search for which Amazon reports should I be looking at every day is a great way to go about it, and how to combine those into different sheets, templates, or where those goes. It's all about getting in, getting your hands dirty, and seeing where that data comes out.
Yeah, and I think this is a good place to really talk about what kind of data do you really need to see, because more data is not better. can be completely overwhelming, right? It's got to be the right data for you to make your business decisions and nothing more, nothing less, right? So I'd love to hear your ideas of maybe a heuristic or a thought process on deciding what kind of data do I want to see. Like, okay, so I can pull all of this data from the Amazon API and create my own custom report. What should I put in that report? Like, how am I going to decide?
Yep, absolutely. When you're thinking about what data to put in a report, and I'm going to approach this from a more of a high level, less specific to Amazon, but I'm going to try and help you understand when I'm trying to decide which data should be seen in my report. The first thing I do is download as much of it as I can. So I go in, and Amazon's got hundreds of reports, so you got to be a little careful with this, right? But you download that data and you just start downloading, opening up the CSV, look for trends, look for patterns that you see in the data, look for places where you're getting cost. There are entire businesses devoted to finding lost FBA stuff, right? Like there's refund companies that are built on, let me show you how often Amazon is losing your product in its warehouse, and they just don't tell you about it. and you need a credit from them of some kind, right? So the way that someone found that is exactly this process. Go through that list of reports and see one that starts to spark interest. A SKU level report, a listings report that describes, how much traffic I'm getting and the conversion I'm getting. Get that data downloaded and start to play with it. So that, go on YouTube and look up, how do I make a pivot table? Watch, if you spend 15 to 20 minutes looking up how to make a pivot table, and then you just start playing with the data and mashing it and mixing it and mashing it, eventually you're going to start to find patterns in the data that you're like, oh my gosh, this could change everything. If I could see that number go up or down on a daily basis, it could change everything for me. And that's when you've stumbled upon the right metrics, right? You've stumbled on the right, how to calculate that velocity for when you need to send in more information. Are you just going in and trusting the restock report that Amazon's giving you for as far as when to send something new to FBA? How early are you? I mean, think about it. What are, and sometimes I even say, okay, wait, stop. Don't look at the data at all. Just take a step back and say, okay, if I could wave a magic wand, what would I change about this business? What would I change that would create more revenue for me? So that's the other approach. So one is go play with the data and start to play with it. The other is wave that magic wand. What would I change? Oh, maybe I can see that there's a delay, but between the time when my manufacturer is ready to send that information and stuff to Amazon and the time when I order it, there's a delay. Could you calculate the delay for each one of your different product lines and then figure out how much lead time you have and then go onto Amazon and be like, oh crap, I'm out. I need to go order that. So you could do a better job of tracking your velocity and your lead times to get the right inventory in there at the right time.
Oh, I love that. And there's softwares that cost like thousands of dollars a month that to do that exact same thing. And that's something you can pull in from Amazon's API with a few Excel formulas, like pretty basic Excel formulas if you go set it up, right?
Yeah. Oh, if you're going in, I mean, think about inventory movement and where you're going. It's not, I mean, they talk about how many things do I have available to sell or how many days ahead of my demand am I? If I sell 2 products a day and I've got 30 products in there, I'm 15 days ahead of my demand. So how much do you want to have in there? Those are not super complex formulas, right? You can make it more complex if you start to compare last year's versus this year's and the growth. And I mean, there's a lot of other things you can to make it more complex, but the basic level is just movement. What was my average sales for that product for the past 30 days? And how much do I have available? You now know how many days in stock you have available for that item. Then go look at how long does it take your manufacturer to get it to FBA, and you can be like, oh, shoot, I need to do a better job of ordering that at the right time.
It's so valuable. It's such a valuable thing because making that calculation in your head is probably going to be way off, and that's just all work done for you that is not going to come to your brain. And another thing I really love about pulling in data, specifically with Amazon, is that you can create your own metrics that Amazon is not going to show you as well. Like some really useful ones that we use for our PPC management clients is total account ACOS. So advertising cost of sale, people listening will know that that is, what percentage of the revenue that I'm getting from my Amazon ads is being spent on ads. So basically, how profitable are my ads? But it's also very useful to see how profitable your ads are against your total revenue for the entire account. Like, sure, maybe you're willing to lose a little bit of money on ads and have your ACOS higher than your profit margin within Amazon PPC, but if it's hurting the overall profitability of your entire account, you probably want to see that, right? You probably want to see exactly where you're at. Maybe you're going to ramp it up. Maybe you're going to ramp it down a little bit. So just taking the data that you can get available from Amazon and then creating your own really useful metrics is something I definitely recommend doing if you're setting up some kind of report for yourself.
Yep, absolutely. Where are the holes in your business? That's what we're looking for. We're looking to discover how to find those holes and maintain them and track them down, and then eliminate the hole eventually. But I mean, it's, if you were to diagram out your business model, where does the stuff go? Where could you increase or decrease time? And then where can we find data that indicates how much that time is taking? Where it's not, I mean, from the standpoint of getting in there and getting your hands on that data, that's not the difficult part. The difficult part is knowing which data to start looking at, and taking that step back and either going either route I mentioned, wave that magic wand and then decide which data metrics to go about it, or go the other direction and actually start playing with some of the different reports that you're seeing until you find a data pattern that makes sense to start tracking.
That's so good. And kind of a little side note here, I've just figured out a really, really good way to have team members just fully be accountable for whatever metrics that they are accountable for. So I have something called a weekly scorecard, where a lot of that data is brought in automatically, but there's some data that each team member, they're responsible for some certain metrics that they have to fill out manually. Only them would ever know these metrics. And for a while, I really struggled to really hold people accountable to it and make sure that people really were paying attention to these numbers. And then in our weekly meeting, I have now made it, we go through each team member one by one, and they have to manually go through all of their metrics and explain each of them in front of the entire team, right? And so very quickly, people started paying much more attention to these metrics, and they realized that they had to explain these metrics and have a good reason behind it, and actually understand them, rather than just the metrics are in the spreadsheet, but maybe they don't really care, they didn't really look at them, they don't really understand them. That all becomes very clear if they don't understand their own metrics. If they're talking about it in a team meeting and they just are giving you the this is 7 when it's it's just a very, very, very effective thing that I've started implementing recently for those of you who have teams.
Well, and along that team line, remember the 5 times manually. Those metrics, I mean, Danny, we really should sit down. There's probably some things that we could automate with some of those metrics. Those daily accountability metrics are perfect examples of things that should be automated, but not until you've done it 5 times manually, because you might discover pretty quickly that you're tracking the wrong thing. You try to explain that to somebody and they're like, oh, that really, even them just going through the process of figuring out, this really isn't that important. Why am I even talking about this? They verbally on their own discover, I'm going to change that metric. After they've done it 5 times, you get in there, you get that going, you can then decide, okay, now it's time to make it so that those come in automatically, because you'll eliminate the human error, right? I mean, we've all fat fingered the keyboard and put it a 7 instead of a 4, or a 5 instead of a 7. And sometimes that can be significant, depending on how you're fat fingering, but pretty powerful stuff in terms of automating those daily metrics.
Oh, absolutely. And there's one more thing I want to talk to you about here, and that is, I know you're a really big fan of the lean methodology, and this is more of a, kind of business methodology in general, not really specific to data automation, but I'm sure as a software person in the software world, you have a really interesting spin on this. So what is your whole mindset behind why entrepreneurs and businesses should fail faster and have that feedback loop?
Yeah, absolutely. Failing faster is kind of a core value of mine. I'm a risk taker. I'm a big risk taker. My wife would tell you that I'm totally the dude who's jumped off the cliff head first, didn't look if there were sharp rocks at the bottom. Like, I'm that guy. I'm looking for,
Oh, you and me both.
yeah, looking to get in there and see that. And what I discover is that the thrill of some of that, it gets really exciting, but it also causes me to fall flat on my face faster than everybody else. And what failing faster allows you to get to the why not. So I tell people who are starting a business, I got lots of friends who come to me and say, hey, like, Will, like, I got this idea. Like, I want to try this idea. And I say, well, have you asked anybody to open their wallet yet? Well, no, it's just, I don't want to tell anybody about it because it's my idea. And I say, well, then you don't have anything.
That one blows my mind too. I get it's a pet peeve of mine too when I hear that.
So getting out there and ask somebody to open your wallet. The reason you're doing that is because, one, it puts you at a vulnerable place, which is why people don't do it. But two, it gives you the ability to get the why not. Get the why not faster. Oh, you don't want to buy my widget? You don't want to buy my Thor hammer fidget spinner? Oh, you don't want to buy my headset? Why not? And after you get past enough why nots, that's when you start making business that really works. That's when you start building a system, a black box, so to speak, that prints money. So I'm incredibly passionate about getting to the why not faster. Oh, you failed? Why didn't that work? Why not? And that teaches you what you can do to change. So if you can't learn what you can do to change, and I love that, why not? Well, why not, Danny? Why wouldn't you put me on that podcast? Oh, well, because you need this. Well, if I fix that, could we get on a podcast? Well, why not? And that's what's going to help you get to the point where you can start to succeed. So in anything you're doing in life, fail faster and then stand back up and fix it.
Absolutely love that. And it's an important distinction, I think, between failing and just learning, because you have to put yourself in situations where there's a good chance that you will fail to learn what's going to work and what's not going to work, right? You can't just come up there and come up with an amazing master plan and just make everything perfect and do so much research. Maybe that will make it slightly more likely that you will succeed, but probably it's going to take you way more time than you actually needed to test if something's going to work. And if you're just continually putting yourself in that position where failure is a possibility over and over and over again, you're probably going to figure out what works way better and way faster, and you're not going to have wasted a bunch of time on something that doesn't work. So that's something I do with the agency Kenji ROI all the time. Is whenever I have a new idea for a new service that would be valuable to our clients, or a new course, or a new whatever it is, I just write one email. That's all I do. I brainstorm what it is, and then I write one single email and I send it to my email list. And it's a real offer. There is a checkout page and people can pay for it, but I'm not actually going to create the sales page. I'm not going to actually put together anything unless someone pays for it, or unless a certain amount of people will pay for it. I just have my metric. And there have been lots of times where there's something I was so sure was going to work, and is like, this is just going to crush it and people are going to love it, and not a single person bought it from my entire email list. And likewise, there's been other times where just naturally things that I didn't think were going to do very well just kind of naturally popped into the business, and we started offering that to our clients. So very often I think we are biased to our own, we come up with an idea in our head and we have a bias that it's going to work, and that bias can be completely wrong. And the only way to test that is to put yourself out there in a position to fail in a smaller way, rather than just building it up for a year or 6 months and then putting it out there and just everything's got to go right, because everything is not going to go right. That is just not how entrepreneurship works in my experience. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you think about Thomas Edison, 1,000+ times that he tried to create the light bulb before he actually succeeded. Like what?
Yeah, that's
So-
crazy. That's 1,000. Like that's insane.
Think about how many man hours that was, and then think about the impact he's had on the world because of the light bulb. I mean, it's powerful to understand that idea that failure isn't failure. And honestly, for me, I've just adopted it. Failure is my friend. I love to fail, because when I fail, I get to the why not, and that's when I begin to succeed. So that idea of excluding yourself or extracting your own personality and all of the above from that failure, let the idea fail, and then you pick that idea back up and change it and move it around and figure out where you're going to go with it. It's got to be how it's done.
Boom. Boom shakalaka. That is an excellent golden nugget to end things off with. Well, this has been a very fascinating episode for me. I just really nerd out about this stuff, and I could go on and really pick your brain on things that you automate in your own business, and I'd love to sit down with you at another point and just really talk about that. But for people who are listening and they want to learn more about what you do or data automation, like where can they reach out to you online, or where are some other resources where you'd recommend they check out to learn more about data automation?
Yep, dataautomation.com is our website. That's going to be the main place that you're gonna find us. We've automated some of our social media portals, and we're working on automating more of that. Our business model has been mostly generated based off of word of mouth and our partnerships, and so we haven't needed to automate any of our outbound marketing, because we've essentially automated our own processes and done such a good job with people that are bringing stuff to us. So we're getting more automated in those realms, and that's where you can find us, dataautomation.com. Look out for that podcast. It's dataautomation.com/podcast. You can pre-subscribe, so to speak. Automate, eliminate, delegate, or delegate, eliminate, excuse me. And looking forward to it.
Heck yeah, Will. Well, appreciate your time on here. And guys, if you're looking for any of those links or anything, we'll put those in the show notes at actualizefreedom.com. And if you haven't already, I would love if you guys left a review for the podcast. If you guys could even automate a review for the podcast. If anyone out there could build some kind of program that would just automatically keep opening up new iTunes accounts and then leaving 5-star reviews over and over and over again for the rest of your life, that'd be great. So please go do that, guys. And hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next time.
For show notes and resources mentioned in this episode, visit kenjiroi.com.